Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Planning Commission workshop for Thursday, November 21st, 2024 at 4 p.m. I now call this workshop to order. First item on the agenda is the determination of the quorum. We have almost everybody here, so I think with the exception of Commissioner Reese. And Commissioner Dickman. Nonetheless, we still have a quorum. And then adoption of the agenda is the next item. Do I hear a motion to adopt this afternoon's agenda?
I move that we adopt the agenda as presented.
Do I hear a second? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Visitor communication. This is the time provided for individuals wishing to address the Planning Commission regarding issues not already on the agenda. We don't have anyone in the gallery present. Do we have anyone on Zoom?
We do have several people on Zoom. So just to start, if anyone wants to provide comments at this time during visitor communication, would you be able to raise your hand using the button over Zoom? Otherwise, Scott, do you want me to do a roll call? Okay, I'm going to do a roll call.
Very quickly, I'd like to just remind everyone that this is for items that are not already on this afternoon's agenda.
Okay, I see one name, Build LLC. Do you have any comments during this time during visitor communications that are not otherwise on the agenda?
I do not.
Thank you. The next name I see is Kat. Do you have any comments during this time for visitor communications?
Mike's muted.
And Kat, you're still muted. Oh, there you go. Do you have any comments? We can't hear you. Okay, hearing none, I'm going to move on. Sierra Gordon, do you have any comments for us today that are not on the agenda?
I do not.
Okay, thank you. Okay, last one. Kevin Eckert, do you have any comments during visitor communications today?
I do not.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're good to go.
Great, thank you. Moving along, we'll jump to the workshop and I will hand over to staff.
All right. Thank you, Chair Seymour. Good evening, Planning Commissioner, as well as those members of the public joining us via Zoom. Matthew Martin, Principal Planner, City of Sisters Community Development Department. Purpose of tonight's workshop is to prepare for an upcoming public hearing scheduled for December 5th regarding Larch Commons East proposal. That's an affordable housing cottage development subdivision. And again, the purpose of tonight is to provide some background on the project, some foundational understanding of the project, and answer any questions that you may have in general. Want to acknowledge that this is not the time and place to express those opinions of on the project, the merits of the proposal, and for those discussions and opinions for the public hearing and deliberations at that time. The purpose of that is to preserve the integrity of the process moving forward. My goal, I'm working on Larch Commons East. Scott Woodford, Community Development Director, is staff reviewer of a similar project identified as West. Details an overview of that project in particular. My comments are will include some general overview of affordable housing codes as well as cottage development standards to give you a baseline of what those the purpose and intent of those projects are. And what those standards are, given that we don't necessarily or frequently interface with these elements and sections of our development code. During that general overview, I welcome dialogue and questions from the commissioners, as well as any comments you may have, Scott, throughout. So I do want to lead in with the kind of what the criteria are, and then that overview of affordable housing and cottage development code standards. For this project, as you see on the screen, there's a variety of chapters and sections of the development code that will come into play with this project. Many of those you're familiar with. Downtown Commercial District, that's where commercial projects and site plan reviews have come before you. And then the various standards that apply to any subdivision kind of development that you've seen before, either as a subdivision or master plan development. But again, highlighting that something that's unique or something that we don't see very often are the application of our affordable housing standards, as well as the cottage development standards. So I did want to take this opportunity to provide that general overview. So I do want to start with cottage development. That being the chapter 4.6 of the development code. You did recently see a proposal come forward as a modification to the Woodlands master plan that did apply both the cottage development and affordable housing standards. So you do have some experience with that. But what's unique here is that these subdivisions are proposed outside of any master plan. And so that's where you may not have seen it as a standalone subdivision. Whereas most recently we have those cottage developments at Woodlands, also been applied at master plan at Clear Pine. So those are relatively recent projects that have come forward, but wanted to have a chance to kind of drill down a little bit further. So the purpose of the standards, and I'll read here, to provide a housing type that responds to the changing housing sizes and ages and provides opportunities for ownership of small detached single-family dwelling units. And the principles that are deployed through the development standards are to encourage the creation of more usable open space for residents of the development through flexible density and lot standards. So when we see the standards later, you'll see that it's a kind of a trade-off of allowing more dense and smaller lotting and structural standards with the implementation of common areas and private open spaces to provide those buffering and buffer around the structures, but also allowing for smaller lotting patterns. Also to support the growth management goals for more efficient use of urban residential lands. This has been a strategy that's been in place for since the advent of the cottage development standards in 2014, but also has continued to be refined and updated through efficiency measures that were adopted in recent years to do just that, as noted in this policy and principle, is to create and use our lands more efficiently within the city. And then provides development standards to ensure compatibility with surrounding land uses. So that's when we look at the setbacks and buffering and landscaping requirements that are included with a cottage development to allow for that compatibility and that transition from this development to surrounding more perhaps traditional residential developments or commercial developments in the area. And then lastly, allows diversity of land uses within certain commercial zones, as well as establish smaller lot sizes, creative residential development within residential zones. So we haven't touched on quite yet in any detail, but noting that both these projects are in the downtown commercial district. So this is one of those examples of providing that outlet, that opportunity for residential development in our commercial areas. So how are we facilitating those principles? It comes through a variety of specific code standards, and in particular, allowing for, frankly, relatively small lotting patterns, minimum of 2,000 square feet, but also requiring those structures on those lots to not be of an excessive size, with a maximum size of 1,250 square feet. noting that to reduce the overall mass of the structures, that if it's a two-story structure, that second floor cannot exceed 50% of the footprint or the square footage of the lower floor. So if you have a 800 square feet downstairs, you can't exceed 400 square feet upstairs.
Is there? I'm just wondering what the principle behind that is. Like, why should the second floor be less?
It's massing of the structure so that it's not, well, I think the notion is that it's not a square box. And I think with reducing, having the different, as one phrase, but
Yep.
is to provide a variety within the actual design of the structure, but also affecting and reducing the overall mass of the structure. So it's not uniform or a mono shape, but creating a level of variety there.
Great, thank you.
And then within those overall smaller lots, we want to make sure that you're not building over the entirety of that lot. So establishing a maximum footprint of lot coverage, we use the term of 60% of the overall lot size. So we touched on earlier of creating that common area, that open space. So there are minimum standards that need to be provided with the cottage development. That being first, common area, and that's a minimum of 500 square feet of common area per lot that's being created. So if you're creating 10 lots, you need a minimum of 5,000 square feet of shared common area open space. Then wanting to make sure that there's some private open space that's afforded the actual residents on their lots. So a minimum of 300 square feet per lot needs to be provided on those individual lots. And want to emphasize the term and that needs to be usable open space. So it functions as a patio or other space that you can go outside of your house, but actually provide that private space on your lot, yours own, and not a drainage basin or some other feature that may not be able to be used. So there, with any development, we do have minimum parking standards that are provided. These are unique to cottage developments. And they are varying based on the overall size and number of bedrooms that are provided with each unit. So ranging between one space for the smaller units and upwards of 2 spaces for those cottages that are in excess of 3 bedrooms or more. By comparison with single family dwellings in a standard subdivision, we require a minimum of 2 on-site vehicle parking spaces with each lot. So comparable with those larger cottages. But one flexibility here with the cottage development, instead of requiring that those parking spaces are located on the individual subdivision lot, you can provide that parking either on the lot within the common area of the cottage development, or if there is adequate area adjacent to the lot in the commercial area, that those adjacent frontage and on street off-site parking can be accounted towards the development. Any questions about cottage developments before we transition? Okay. Next being affordable housing. Codified in the development code in section 2.15.800, recently updated in 2022, with the purpose is to encourage development of housing units affordable to lower income earning households and those areas between 30% and 150% of area median income.
So we're this is a low income housing. Is it going to be, is there a way to keep it that way? So, or will we know that down the road? I guess Habitat has some provisions that don't allow for somebody to buy it and then 2 years later sell it at a profit. And
Yeah, there would be legal requirements through a legal document in securing that those affordable housing units are retained and continue through the development. Because
Okay.
that's a critical component of taking advantage of these development opportunities or incentives. And so it'll be secured through a binding agreement.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. A great question.
I have a question. What is the current AMI?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I certainly, that's a great question.
Well, because I read this stuff, you know, I go, well, it doesn't really say to me, you know, really.
Yeah,
We can get those figures for you for the public hearing, and keep in mind that they do vary based on family size too.
Right.
and noting that that does change over time, you know, yeah, no, absolutely. And so just want to acknowledge, that's why we have percentages and not a dollar figure in the code, so that years down the road that it would be subject to those current conditions. So the incentives that are offered in the code to providing and requiring the provision of affordable housing come in two primary forms, and it's a choice of the developer themselves. One is that you can create lot sizes that are smaller than the minimum lot sizes allowed in the zone. And in this case, it's not the zone, but rather the cottage development standards that are dictating that minimum lot size. So it could go down to 70% of the overall lot area requirement for the development or that particular zone. So in this case, we're looking at applying or varying from the 2,000 square foot minimum lot size allowed in the cottage development. In other circumstances, or a developer could choose, is a density bonus, which would allow you to create more units than would be allowed otherwise in that particular zone. For example, if the density was a minimum, or excuse me, a maximum of 10 units per acre, you could go above and beyond that and create either 10 and a half upwards of 11 and a half units per acre as part of the development, depending on the percentage AMI target that you're trying to hit. So for the lower income earners, you're given a higher density bonus, an allowance to create more units. Whereas if it's a higher AMI, then not quite as intensive.
But the 70% doesn't have any reference to the AMI?
It does. You need, but it's within the threshold of the 30 to 150%.
Okay, yeah,
So you
it's
need to
not
be with-
specific like the stepped like the.
Correct. It's not dependent on
Right.
on what category or what threshold you're meeting. But
Okay,
to take advantage of the 70%, you need to be no more than the 150%.
okay, thank you.
Okay, any questions about affordable housing before we move into project-specific details? Okay, good. So that gives you a baseline of kind of what's unique to these projects above and beyond what a standard subdivision for residential development would be. So I'm going to speak to Larch Commons East. And to give you a kind of oriented to where the project's located, we have the larger City of Sisters map located kind of generally in the northeast portion of the town and the northeast portion of the downtown commercial district, but more specifically near the intersection of North Larch Street and East Adams Avenue. This subject property is comprised of two lots, two distinct lots of record, and they are disconnect from that intersection of those streets with two intervening existing lots. As previously noted, the subject properties are zoned downtown commercial. I think this kind of maybe jump around a little bit, noting when we're talking about the density bonus or the option of the minimum lot size reduction. Downtown commercial does not have a density requirement for residential developments. So that would, yeah, that wasn't even an option in these cases or applicable to the projects in the downtown commercial district. So with Larch Commons East, they're proposing to create 17 individual buildable lots ranging between around 1,400 square feet upwards of just under 2,000 square feet in area. With the project, they're proposing 22,000 square feet of common area that'll run between the lots, as well as provide areas as buffers along the boundaries of the subdivision, but also the drive aisle that extends from Larch Street around the development and through the development down to Adams Avenue. That's also located in the common area, as well as other common features, a bank of covered parking, storage lockers, as well as the shared waste disposal enclosure.
No parking in the drive aisle then, right? Other than the designated spaces that are off of the aisle.
Correct. So the drive aisle is only 20 feet in width, so that would not be wide enough to accommodate on-site parking on the drive aisle. So each lot along the drive aisle does provide for a on-site parking stall, and then in addition to those parking along that within that bank of covered parking. This development requires a minimum, or is proposed with a minimum of 24 on-site vehicle parking spaces. Does not account for any off-site or on-street parking. Additional amenities include a pedestrian walkway that extends from Larch Street through the common area there on the northwest portion of the site, over to the bank of the parking, over to the storage lockers, as well as the trash receptacles and the mail cluster box.
Designed, you would have common trash receptacles instead of individual for each residence?
Correct. Yeah, so they'll have several to meet the needs of the output, but yes, so it'd be one common disposal site shared amongst the residents.
Okay.
And so of those 17 units, 14 are proposed to be 2-bedroom, 3 are proposed to be 1-bedroom. And based on the AMI percentage, the applicant has proposed 14 of the units to be within the 60 to 80% AMI range, and then 3 of the units to be between that 80 and 150% range. So here on the image is particular along the bottom are conceptual drawings of the proposed structures, and the images above were offered by the applicant as their inspiration for the design of their structures. And because the properties are located in the downtown commercial district, the Western Frontier design theme is applicable to the overall development. So we'll be looking at looking for your opinions on the overall design. We're looking at the form, the materials, and the architectural elements of the structures. Of course, this is just a high-level kind of introduction. Within the staff report, we'll really drill down on the overall elements of the layout, as well as evaluation for compliance with the Western design theme. Really, that's the extent of my overview. Just to acknowledge, we have again that the public hearing for this matter is scheduled for December 5th, beginning at 5:30. Notices have been published in the Nugget this week, and were mailed out to surrounding property owners within 250 feet yesterday, as well as posted notice on the property. So we'll prepare the staff report, and with the requirement that it's prepared and issued no less than 7 days prior to the hearing. So we'll have that out next week.
Preliminary plans, they're taking advantage of the 70%, because I've noticed some of the lot sizes are under.
Yes, so thank you for, I'll highlight that again, that with the provision of the affordable housing or the agreement to provide that, they've taken advantage of the reduction in the overall lot size to 70
Right.
square feet or no less than 70% of the required minimum lot size. Yep. Thank you.
All right. Scott Woodford, for the record. This is also a workshop for a similar project, but slightly different from the same property owner, or same applicant rather, and same property owner. That being Sisters Habitat for Humanity, for a project called Larch Commons West. And similar to the Larch Commons East, this is also a workshop and will be scheduled for a public hearing on December 5th. So same rules apply in terms of how we want to conduct the conversation, keeping it high level, keeping it to questions, clarifying questions. Matt did a good job of explaining what the purpose of the cottage development was and the affordable housing provisions, and many of those same provisions apply in this application as well. So this one is just to the west of Larch Commons East. It's separated essentially by Larch Street. It sits on 3 legal lots along Adams Avenue. And the total of all those 3 lots are about 28,000 square feet, a little less than around 2/3 of an acre in total, and also zoned downtown commercial. There is an existing house on the property in the middle. If you can see my cursor there, yep. There's an existing house that is slated to remain and be incorporated into this project, and the lots on either side are currently vacant. The proposal here is for 10 total units, 10 total lots. That includes 6 cottage lots. Those are the ones on the left. 1 new cottage units, 1 through 5, and then incorporation of the existing single family into this development. That's number 10 to the top in the center. The units on the right are 4 townhome units. And those are all proposed to be new and accessed off of a private drive to be conceptually called Pearl Court, which would come into the site and basically dead end at the northern part of the property at this point. Potentially, if there's future development on the property to the north, that street could connect through potentially. The lot sizes here are for cottage units, primarily with 1 through 4 are 1,508, and they also are proposing to take advantage of the affordable housing allowances that allow them to go to 70% of what the cottage code allows for lot sizes. Lot 5, I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, you can see those numbers. It's slightly larger. It has a lot size of 2,295. The existing single-family lot will be put on a 4,460 square feet lot. And just for reference, our minimum lot size for a single family in the residential district is around 4,500. So that gives you a little bit of reference. But this one's smaller because it's technically included in the cottage development. Then the townhome lots themselves to the right, each one of those units sits on a 2,450 square foot minimum townhome size lot. The common area, which is a little challenging to see, but it's shown kind of where the the drive is, the private drive, for the parking spaces to the southern part of the drive, and then the pathway that provides access to the units in between is all common area, and that's about 6,700 square feet. Similar to the large commons east, this one also includes a small carport, this a little smaller, but a carport structure over four of the parking spaces as you enter into the site. It also includes some area for storage on the backside of that carport, kind of at the west end of those parking spaces. It also includes a trash recycling common area behind that storage area up against the wall there.
The pro court, is that 20 feet as well?
Yes, correct.
It seemed like if you had a,
Oh, actually, let me qualify that a little bit. Where it goes adjacent to parking areas, and I'll have to measure this for certain, but because our standards require where there is parking backing onto a street, it's more like a parking, it's like a drive aisle. And there's a requirement that it be 24 feet there. I think they have that.
because I was just looking at that and thinking, God, if somebody had a pickup truck and they were trying to back out and come around without hitting the car next to them, it's going to be tight.
Right, and that's, they did modify their drive. It could be a minimum of 20 feet where there's no parking adjacent to it. Where there is parking adjacent, there is a requirement for it to be wider for the reasons you dictate there. So there's also, looks like you have a question, sir?
Yeah, Scott, is anybody living in house number 10?
There is someone living there.
Okay, so
and
it's already occupied.
yes,
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
you're welcome. Yeah. You may be aware that Adams Avenue has a plan for streetscape improvements. It hasn't been implemented yet, but it's slated for parking and pedestrian path and landscaping improvements. And the city was going to do the project itself through URA funds, but it's been put on hold temporarily because of the initial costs that came in were quite high. But the applicants, people who develop along the frontage of Adams Avenue, have the option of either putting in the improvements themselves or paying basically a fee to the city for that we can utilize to help construct all the improvements. But they've elected just to put those improvements in themselves, so you can see the meandering path out in the right of way in front of the development, as well as an expanded paved area that would accommodate parallel parking in front. So there's another parking option for residents there. There are limits in terms of how long you can leave a car there without moving it in the right of way, but in terms of overflow parking, that does provide some overflow parking for the development. In terms of the unit types, we're talking here, 7 of the units are proposed to be 2-bedroom units, and that is 5 of the new cottage units are proposed to be 2-bedroom, as well as 2 of the townhome units are 2-bedroom. One of the cottage units is a 3-bedroom, and no, correct. Scratch that. Only 2 of the units are 3-bedroom units, and those are both townhome units. The existing house that is going to be incorporated into the project is a 1-bedroom unit. In terms of the breakdown of affordable and workforce housing, and those terms are terms that are defined in the code, and we use those to help differentiate the 2 terms. Affordable housing is for those making 60 to 80% of the area median income, and then workforce housing is defined as 80 to 150% of the area median income. And it's important in our code for various reasons where our code may reference the differences of the two. And also was important as we put out opportunities for grant funds for this project. They were able to apply through the city to get funds through the Affordable Housing Grant Fund, and as well as a new grant fund that we set up, which is called the Workforce Housing Grant Fund, that took advantage of some funds set aside in the Urban Renewal Authority area. Yeah.
Are there reduced development fees as well for affordable housing through the city?
Not currently, but they could potentially use the grant funds for payment of SDCs. There's been discussion in the past about offering, say, like a tiered system for system development charges, where affordable housing might be able to pay a bit less. The direction that the city decided to go on was instead of doing that was just to offer this grant fund opportunity, and Habitat has taken advantage of it in the past.
Is the grant fund sizable enough to make a dent in the SDCs?
On a project of this scale, it'll help. It's for affordable housing, it's 120,000. For the workforce housing fund, they were able to take advantage of the $400,000. So it would, I think, all told, would put a pretty good dent in there.
Does the Deschutes County do anything in terms of their permit fees? Because
Not that I'm aware of, no.
you still have to get, you have the SDCs here, and then you have
Building
permits
building
that have to
permit
go through
fees. Yeah,
Deschutes County.
yeah. Not that I'm aware of. Amy, are you aware of anything?
I think it would be important to make sure that the SDC money goes to the right spots, because SDC, that's set aside for those reasons. Those costs don't go up or down. They go up, they don't go down, I should say.
Right.
That doesn't, that still exists. The sewer still flows, that money needs to stay in that spot.
Yeah, those funds need to be,
They could-
those funds need to be whole. We can't, it's tough to, I think this is your point, that if
Yeah.
we started giving breaks on SDCs,
And
we
then we
would
have-
be unable to maybe complete all the projects necessary.
Yeah.
Although different, I know Ben has a program, a tiered program, I believe, for affordable housing for reduced SDC. So it's done elsewhere. It's not the direction that the city here chose to go. They chose to do it a different way through this grant fund.
Thanks.
This project in whole is I would call it a mixed income type of development. There's 5 affordable units. 4 of them are cottage units. 1's a townhome unit. There's 3 workforce housing units, 1 being a cottage unit and 2 being townhome units. And then what I'm calling free market housing, no limits or no subsidies, is the existing house, and then 1 of the townhome units.
Is the existing house scheduled to be made over as well then too, or?
I have not heard anything to that effect in terms of changes to the existing house. We could have the applicant address that at the hearing.
It's a fairly new start.
I'm just struggling to understand the parking spots. The 13 looks like it would block number 1 in. I'm just not sure how to look at that.
Yeah, great question, and hopefully this will help clarify that. In terms of the parking requirement, Matt talked about the different standards that the cottage development has, in that 1 space is required for 1-bedroom units, and in this project there's 1. 1.5 spaces for the 2-bedroom units, of which there are 5. So that essentially equals 7. So 8 parking spaces for the cottage units, and those spaces would be the 4 under the carport to the left of Pearl Court, and then the 4 essentially on lot 10. 2 of those would, one of those would be reserved for the lot 10 because it only has one space required, and then the other 3 would be available to the other cottages. How they're divvied up, that's more of an internal management issue.
That's kind of one of my questions. So are they like part of the deed of the property? I mean, you own that spot? I mean, can anybody pull in there and park? Is there any?
No, well, yeah, it's anybody, you mean like anybody from the
Yeah.
public or?
Well, I mean, it's your own private property,
Yeah.
kind of, but yeah, it seems like if three people showed up, I mean, you know, like typical apartment living, and is there any restrictions on that proposed?
I don't know. I think it's something, it's a good question that we should probably ask and have the applicant address at the hearing in terms of how they manage those units. For our purposes, it's really, do they meet the minimum requirements and meet the other standards associated with it? How they manage it would be interesting to know, but it's less, I guess, of a planning issue.
Yeah,
I would imagine they
Yeah.
would assign
Mhm.
a space to those units, but that's a good question to ask.
I mean, the only reason, I mean, part of the problem that would be our problem was if it's spilled out onto the street, which that's what'll happen.
True. You know, that's where, you know, other city rules would apply, you know, if
Yeah.
as part of as part of getting the fire marshal on board with these, reduced, aisle widths was to make sure that there was, internal enforcement of parking in spaces that, need to be kept clear for case emergency vehicles need to be using it. So we worked, the applicant came up with some safeguards for that and signage and other enforcement methods and worked with the fire marshal to satisfy that concern. But it will be an ongoing management issue for sure. Um, the availability and the construction of the on-street parking should help with, you know, if the demand, you know, the occasional visitors, you know, that come visit, there's the opportunity to park on the street temporarily. So in terms of the parking on the private lot 10, yeah, there's going to have to be some agreements in place to for easements for those parking spaces and agreements that those spaces don't go away upon sale, that they're there for in perpetuity for the availability of the residents. And then on the townhomes, each unit has a single car garage as well as 2 cars in the driveway. So they actually, each one of those units has three spaces when the requirement is only 2. So there is a little bit of extra space there.
I'd miss it. Those were driveways.
They are driveways.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Matt touched on the applicability of the Western design theme. And again, these are some representations of precedents that the architect supplied that they say they drew on to arrive at the proposed designs, and so that will be a area of consideration for the Planning Commission as they review these. So that all that information will be in the staff report that will be available probably more than a week early due to the Thanksgiving holidays. So you can read it while you're eating your Thanksgiving dinner or not. Yeah, this is pretty much just repetition from what Matt provided. Before I go down that road, I'll just ask if there are any other questions or any other pieces of information that we could clarify or provide for you at the meeting. Some of these questions you're asking are questions that the applicant will be able to answer for you.
That our packet contained your information our packet today did not contain your portion.
In terms of like our staff findings.
There was one, I got mine and I got one in my packet.
It shows this map right here.
I don't know. Got like,
This one was a little bit doctored for this presentation, but
maybe not that one, but like this one.
Or yeah, I got that one.
yeah, we'll supply you with the full breadth of information for you.
Do we have a tentative date for the Adams Street, the streetscape renovation?
the city improvements.
Mhm.
Nothing imminent.
We've been kicking that can for like
You know,
6 years now.
A couple years, and a couple years ago, I think we got a bid on it, and I think that's when the bids came through, and it was quite significantly higher than we thought it was going to be. So that was kind of post-pandemic, you know, when things were going crazy. So I don't know if they've gone down. Hopefully, gone down. I heard they've gone down a little bit. Maybe it's. I don't know what Paul's thinking in terms of going out and rebidding it again.
Okay. Just because if I recall, the streetscape to the west of Larch had, there was some differences between that and then maybe it was Cedar. I know that there was a divide somewhere. And on west versus east, there was,
I think it's Fir. I think it's Fir.
Fir?
Is the dividing line.
Okay. I guess what I'm getting at is, since that is still somewhat unknown, and here we have what looks like I've always referred to the requirement to streetscape your development on Adams as the sidewalk to nowhere. I just want to make sure that there's consistency and continuity with these proposals and what we could potentially be looking at. Sorry, I'm probably getting into more opinionated stuff than I should be right now, but
Is your
Well, we need to start, it's a good idea to bring it up. I mean, so like.
I just want to make people aware of it.
Yeah.
Give some context.
Is your question to make sure that they, what they're proposing fits in with what?
Yeah, I withdraw any questions specifically regarding that, and I'll wait till the hearing, but more just thinking out loud at this point.
Yeah.
That stated. That stated that, you know, the proposal is supposed to take into account the surrounding areas. Adams Street, making sure it fits in.
Yeah, there was discussion early on with the applicant, with the city public works director and the city engineer to make sure that, you know, what they put in is in accordance with what the city is planning to build eventually,
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
even though it will stick out a little bit for a while.
Well, and if I could make a comment, not to trying to make it clear we're west and east with the various projects, but just want to acknowledge that it's either the city can build the street cross sections, or you develop and improve your street frontages as they're proposing with the west project, or you can pay into a fund to pay for those overall improvements in lieu of making the improvements along your frontage. In the case of,
All the owners are going to be mandated to do that by a certain time period, or
to do what?
to pay into the improvement?
No, it's with development.
Oh, just.
So
with-
if you were improving or developing your site, then you need to consider either the streetscape is a requirement. So you either make those improvements along your frontages, or you pay a fee in lieu of
Sure,
to help support.
but
the
only with
overall cost.
development.
Only with
Existing
development.
property.
Only
It's
with
not like
development.
bonding.
Yeah.
It's not quite like a bond, is it?
No.
Or
You'd have to bond the total sum.
local
You-
improvement district, it's not.
Yeah.
Right. Point being is with the east project, they're taking the route of paying a fee in lieu of improving their frontages, particularly because the frontage along Adams is so limited that it'd be a very short section. So to your point, Chair Seymour, that it would be just a small segment that goes nowhere. You know, it doesn't connect, and so it makes more sense from an improvement standpoint, perhaps from financial aspect, is just to support that project through financial contribution.
Side note, my own opinion, that requirement, in my own experience, is one of the reasons why Adams has not developed the way that it could have. So for future planning commission
Know exactly what we're
consideration.
Talking about.
It's true. Any other questions about this project that we can answer for you at this point?
I kind of feel sorry for the solid waste company having to roll the cans down to get access to them, because they're not going to reach with their long arm from the street. In both of these proposals, right, but I'm saying that it has to be put out for the garbage company to pick it up.
They'll have a dumpster.
A dumpster, or, you know, if it's a whole bunch of rolly cans, you know, they're still quite a ways away from the street.
I think they get a shot at approving it as well, don't they? They get an opportunity.
They have to have access to
Yeah.
the dumpster, so you'd have to put it at like the end or somewhere where they can just back in and open the door and grab the dumpster.
We referred development applications to them for quite a while. We never got any response, and I'm not sure I don't know if we still do that or not, but are they still on our agency list? We don't often hear back from them, but it's good planning to do so, in my mind. Hopefully the applicants coordinate directly with the, what's that?
High Desert.
Republic.
Yeah, yeah. So that's a good question to ask at the hearing, Rick, Commissioner Ratzman.
Any other questions? All right.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
I'm gonna, since we do have one individual in our audience that has requested to make a comment, I'm gonna go ahead and open up the floor to her. Miss, if you'd like to join us. Nancy, if you want to just state your name and address for the record, that'd be wonderful. And if you want to just press that little rectangular button on your microphone there.
Thank you. Interesting. I'm a little new to the area, so I'm still learning your process here. So a couple things. So are these gonna be, oh, I'm sorry. Are these for the, are they rentals or are they selling them?
These are all intended to be ownership units.
Ownership units? Okay.
And just to let you know, this is not a public hearing in terms of if you're wanting to offer an opinion on the project just
I
yet.
understand.
Okay.
I
thank you.
understand. I got that part when I came in.
Good.
And so I wanted just to ask though, is it the planning commission's position that when an applicant comes in, that you go along with however many lots they have to the square foot of the space that they're doing, you, or do you usually often, I'm just a little, concerned about, it seems like they're trying to get an awful lot of units in a really small space and overall. And the amount that they're offering, when I take the 50,000 and you take the 22 off of it for the open space, it doesn't really seem, for the number of units that there are, it doesn't really seem like there's enough adequate like living space, like they're bumper to bumper, they're really close. And I'm wondering if like the
I think all due respect, I believe this is testimony.
Oh, it's not testimony.
It is
I'm-
directly related to the project, and
Oh,
I don't want to have a procedural foul that
I'm
that runs
sorry.
into legal challenges later on. So with all due respect.
I would just offer up that we would be, staff would be happy to sit down and kind of explain
Okay.
to you kind of how
Sure.
how the code sees this project. And you
Oh, I see.
you asked a good question about how the planning commission determines how many units are allowed, and we can kind
I
of
see.
explain.
Okay.
It's probably the better, it's like Matt said, it's probably the better forum for that.
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
Okay.
we'd be,
I-
you can come down and talk to us anytime. We're,
So when you present this to the members on the commission, then they would just be responding with their questions, but you wouldn't be thinking about changing anything before the workshop. Is that correct?
in terms of the development code.
And yeah, and is it only by like the code, like when the cottages for the one bedroom had one space, you would just go with the code, like the commission then couldn't come back and ask a question, can we increase that or
Okay.
not?
That's a good question. They can always ask, but they can't require.
Oh, I see.
If the code says, says what it says, and if the applicant meets that, we can't ask for additional parking or additional other things unless the code allows you to do that. And so,
Okay.
it's a good question though.
Can I add a little bit more, maybe a little higher level view of just kind of how the whole process works? And what happens is when somebody wants to develop their property, they come up with a proposal and then they file a development application based on what they want. Then that then goes to the staff at the city for their review. And then a lot of back and forth goes based on what the development code allows. And then they have to compare with what the applicant is asking for. By the time it comes to us, staff has typically reviewed it, and we are then the public body that looks at it to make sure that, well, there's a variety of things that go into it. The first thing is that we apply the current development code to make sure that it does meet the development code. Second thing is we take into account a lot of other factors like the public sentiment and the intent of the application and a variety of other external factors that go into it. But our primary job is to ensure that the application meets and qualifies to the development code.
Oh, I see. And so if for some reason that, like on the cottage, that was one bedroom, and it needed, say, 2 people had vehicles, would the code change or would you amend that?
No, the code doesn't change.
I see. Okay, so,
Well, the code can change, but it's a big process to change the code. We don't change the code per application. It's a whole, it covers citywide code. So we change it for one thing, it blankets across the entire city.
Yeah, the code that is applied is the code that is in place when the application is submitted.
okay. And then in the application, you already, in your code, you already have, trying to think how to word this. You already have, you know that when the applicant submitted the application, that your streets are already wide enough for the cars and the mattress delivery company that's going to be coming down the street to make the turns, and that's already been included. Is
Yeah,
that
those
correct?
kinds of factors, kind of minimum standards for widths of streets and things of that nature are prescribed in the code that they need to
Okay.
follow.
The fire marshal has a lot to do with it.
Okay.
Private drives, yeah, for sure.
They have to sign off.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I think that you guys have to get the fire marshal to approve it pretty much before we see it, right?
Well, they get to we
Yeah.
definitely make sure that they have a chance to provide comment on it.
Yeah,
Be able to clear snow.
yeah.
Get to meet the fire code
Yep,
standards.
fire truck needs to get down there.
Okay.
So you're welcome to come back December 5th and offer your full opinion if you want at that time during the public hearing, or if you have further questions about what code, how it's applied, you can come talk to the staff. We're here to kind of help you answer those questions.
And what size is a cottage?
The maximum size for a cottage is 1,250 square feet.
Really? Wow. Okay. Bigger than I thought.
Yeah.
Okay. That's all I had.
And then just for your own benefit, if you do decide to testify at the hearing, which we welcome and encourage, unfortunately, we can't answer questions in a hearing setting like that. This is pretty informal, so we're able to do that. In a hearing setting, we don't have that ability, and so we're there to listen. And so typically, the format is when you testify, you have 3.
I'm familiar with that part.
Okay, great.
And so the planning commission reviews it, and then does it go to council, or does,
In this particular instance, it would stop at the planning commission unless it was appealed,
okay,
and then we go to council, or the council members, 2 or more council members called it up for a hearing. That's another
okay,
way.
thank you.
Thank you for coming in.
Thank you. Do we have anyone on Zoom that would like to share any thoughts?
Is there anyone over Zoom that would like to, is it provide comments or just questions at this point?
Yeah, what's your preference in terms of allowing comments at this point?
Questions of clarification, I think, are sufficient.
Okay.
Okay. Any
Questions of clarification?
questions of clarification? Thank you. Okay, I see one hand raised. Dixie Eckford, I'm going to call on you.
Hi.
Hi. I can hear you.
Okay. I just had a question generally about fencing in a development like this. Who are people who own property allowed to fence their unit off of from everybody else? Are they allowed to put a fence up along the street? And if so, you know, how high are they? How does that work in a cluster unit like this?
Technically, they could put up a fence. They've made comments in our meetings with them that they are proposing not to include fences on any of the property.
Not to include or not to allow?
I guess not to either, not to include them initially and not to allow. This is a question, again, we should ask for the applicant to address, but in talking about utility layouts with the applicant and the engineers, the comment came up that they were not proposing fences, but we should have them address that at the meeting.
Okay, that's just one thing I notice around town a lot more than there used to be. Seems like everybody wants to put a fence up, and it is definitely impacting the look and the friendliness, in my opinion, of the town. So that's my only comment. Thank you very much, you guys. I'll see you in a week or two.
I'll note that there are fencing standards for all properties within the community, depending on the location, their location within the front yard setbacks, location or proximity to intersections to not
Right.
block clear vision areas, height limits within those front yard or front property line areas.
Mhm.
They have an
Okay.
HOA, they'll,
Well, that's
they'll make the decision, right?
HOA driven, yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dixie. Anyone else who would like to provide comments? I'm going to start with anyone who can raise their hand over Zoom as opposed to doing a roll call. Scott, do you want me to do a roll call or call it good?
No, I think that's good.
All right. I think we're good. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks everyone for that. Staff and commissioner comments. Staff, any additional comments?
I would just offer that we conducted planning commission interviews this week. Thank you for your participation, Commissioner Blumenkron. Had 10 really quality applicants for this, for essentially 3 positions. So those of you who are leaving will be sad to leave you, but know that your positions will be filled with other good people too. They won't have the experience right off the bat that you do, but we were blessed with lots of good applicants there. There's a lot of interest in these positions. So it was great for the community. It was bad for the interview committee because it makes our choices really challenging. And I'm sorry, Matt also participated as well. So I think they share the same thoughts. Those candidates will be appointed on December 11th by the mayor. So it's going to be a new look commission next year.
That's
for
at the
sure.
next council meeting is 11th.
Yeah. So you guys are the veterans. You're going to have to.
Peaceful transfer of power.
See.
No, somebody's not wearing buffalo.
I
We're gonna have a January 6th in City Hall.
Jeff,
I
you
don't-
come
I
back in with the horns.
I was gonna say, I don't think Jeff's gonna like put up a fight. He could have just stayed, right?
I think he's going to run.
Gonna throw the gap.
I may gallop into the.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Anything from the commissioners?
I don't know. I heard that there was some good news from up on the podium here in the last week.
Gosh.
Yep. Not to over embarrass Emmy, but would you
Well,
like to share?
Thanks. So I've been studying for my AICP exam and I took it on Monday and I passed.
What's AICP?
And the AICP exam is the
know
American
that part?
Institute of Certified Planners. So it's the same credential that Matt has to get that national planning certification.
All right, congratulations.
Thanks. Thank you. Thanks, Sarah. Talk to
Anyone
Scott.
Arch.
When I worked for the state, they gave us a raise every time we got a, a nationally recognized certification. So
Really?
throwing that out there.
Thanks, Rick.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. We're just here to help.
Yeah.
If that's all possible, I would.
Yeah.
You can pass that on to my boss.
Yeah.
Our bosses.
Bosses.
Our
I have
boss, our future boss.
just one small thing. Today marks the 1 year of Jack Nichols passing, former planning commissioner and influential longtime Sisters resident. So I just wanted to commemorate him.
So
Absolutely.
I have to ask, did the Applejack Street, was that attributed to him?
I'm thinking so.
Okay.
Applejack Street?
Applejack, where the smokehouse is currently,
Yeah.
that used to be, he used to have a produce stand there called Applejack's for a long time.
I think he built the building, or at least initiated the land use application for it.
And they have a street name?
The one that we
The
just talked
proposed
about
development.
is
Oh,
one of them.
Oh, I didn't notice that one. Okay.
So
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks for.
he was a good friend.
Yep. Still got to get his speed bumps in on Adams. Failed to get that done.
The rest of the stuff on that.
Anything else? All right. Thanks, everybody. We're adjourned.